KEF Connect. Conversations that matter. Tune in every week for interviews with industry trendsetters and community changemakers that will instill inspiration and ignite action. Visit www.kefholdings.com and click KEF Connect to listen.
Welcome back to the KEF Connect podcast, the Why Wellness season. We are well and truly underway, and the series have had some incredible guests, some riveting conversations, and we love to get your opinions on it. I know you are all loving the season so far, and it just gets better and better. What can I say? Today's episode in particular is going to be an incredibly engaging conversation, and we have some wonderful women around the table to have this discussion on Western versus alternative medicine. I've been joined by Dr. Lana Dalbah, who is co-founder of iDental Academy, American board orthodontist and orofacial pain specialist. Dr. Lana, welcome.
Thank you. My pleasure.
We have Yasmine Rushdi, who is the who comes from Myndtraining. You are the founder, I believe. Welcome, Yasmine. And Anne Hockett, who is the founder of YouHealing International. Anne, welcome.
Thank you.
So, ladies, this is going to be quite an interesting conversation. It is something that, in this modern day, a lot of people are talking about with different influences, whether it be cultural, personal, location-wise, wherever you are from the world, what your influences are in that sense. I guess to start off with a broad question, again, no right or wrong, but what are the key differences between Western and alternative medicine? Anne, I would love to start with you.
Big question. Short answer would be that alternative is more looking to find a solution that honors the magical nature of the human body, to work with the body. And the second, I guess, would be to treat the root cause instead of treating symptoms. Mm-hmm. And then I'll let my colleagues add to that.
Absolutely. Yasmine, for you.
Yeah, so basically alternative medicine has been there for centuries. And this is the start of how human beings were healing themselves using herbs, using oils, using even just their hands and energy healing. Mm-hmm. And then that evolved into Western medicine, which is the modern day medicine, where there is surgeries and medications and more complex lab work. Mm-hmm. So I see them both as complementing one another versus being two schools that are opposing each other. Mm-hmm. So we can talk more about the details.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Lana, for you, the difference between the two?
I think the main difference is people perceive Western medicine to be more backed up by science, because they believe that then when they publish articles in peer-reviewed journals and they are randomized studies, that they are taking out the chances that it's working by backing this up by science and data and numbers. While alternative is looked at as if it's like, it's like, it's kind of placebo and people like it because it has less side effects.
Mm-hmm. Now that we've got your opinions on what we think between the two, I would love for you to introduce yourselves and talk to us about what you do here in this region, your careers, and why this topic in particular is very important to you. So over to you, Anne.
Okay. I have been at this for more than 40 years. And what I'm probably most known for in the region is running fasting retreats. So I am a gut health geek, and both my colleagues are nodding. So we know that 80 to 90% of all wellness, if not more, originates in the gut. So my job is one gut at a time, or many at a time, to clean people out so that they can be of service to self, family, community, and planet. My story is that I'm a Western medical snob. That's how I was trained. I wouldn't have believed any of this. I would have thought that it was all voodoo until I got really sick myself. So multiple surgeries later, 4 strokes, 4 near-death experiences, 2 pacemakers, and a partridge in a pear tree. I had done everything I could in Western medicine, and I was not going to have much of a life expectancy. So it was very low risk for me to turn over to the other side, to the light side, and with a sample size of 1 experience at all, and go from pacing 54% of the time a day to now being completely non-pacemaker dependent, 16 years drug-free. So it's a miracle. Wow. And now I practice with other people what I did to change the trajectory of my own wellness.
Wow, what a story. Amazing. Yeah. And we'll definitely deep dive into that a lot. That was such a quick summary. When's the book coming out?
The movie. Meryl Streep is playing.
The movie. You've already planned it. I love it. Yasmine, on to you. Talk to us more about mind training and what you do in particular.
Yeah, so I've been in this field for 7 years. I come from a corporate banking background, and I wasn't at all in alternative healing or even in self-development. And I founded Mind a couple of years back, and today I work with people in helping them have a successful, thriving mindset, because I believe it all starts with the mind and with knowing your abilities, knowing that your body has a healing power instead of residing to medications and relying on popping pills and just immediately running to a doctor, that you have a lot of answers within you. So my role is mainly to empower people to know their truth, know what they're capable of, and that really people should not get sick. And my story started when I came here to Dubai. So I grew up in Dubai, and I came here when I was 5, and I had asthma and eczema. And my parents took me to every single doctor in Dubai, in Jordan, everywhere we traveled, and it wouldn't disappear. Until one day, so just to cut the story short, I was actually given a choice whether I would like just scratch everywhere and itch everywhere and wear long sleeves and long clothes and not show any part of my body, or to basically stop all of this if I still want to be into my fashion, basically. And because I was given these two choices as a child, and you know how kids are very open and they have no limitations and no really rationalizing, obviously I chose to be the fashionista. So I immediately stopped scratching, immediately. And from that day, I never saw eczema in my life. And the same thing happened with asthma. I loved basketball, and I couldn't finish a basketball match that was so important to me back then. Because of the asthma, and I couldn't breathe, so I had to leave the field. And that day I was so upset, and I said, I'm not that person anymore. I don't want asthma in my life. I'm not this person, and that's it. I want to be healthy. I want to be thriving. And that was it. It was really a miracle to people who really don't know how the brain works. But looking back in hindsight, now I know what I actually did. So what I did is I reprogrammed my mind from the personality of someone who is sick and weak to the personality of someone who is thriving and healthy and full of energy and life.
Wow.
And this is what I do. So I teach people how to design their lives and how to choose the personality they want to be and become that, embody that, instead of buying into the story of victimization and illnesses and all that.
Well, you're living proof it's possible. I absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Lana, over to you. I know that you are Western medicine focused, but could you tell us more about your history, your career, and why this topic is important to you?
Yes. So I'm a trained orthodontist, meaning dentist who specialize in braces. And then in 2016, I developed severe TMJ pain after a chiropractor session, which was like out of nowhere. And then I started wanting to heal this issue, and it didn't heal. So I decided that I will learn it from the people who teach it properly in the US, because I am US trained and I believe in their science and so on. So I did my master's degree in orofacial pain. Within that degree and classes, I found that they are focused so much on medications. And I thought for myself, I don't want to take these medications as a patient of TMJ. So myself not wanting to take that, how can I offer it to my patients? Because I start to see more of that, kind of group of people. Then I start to look for alternatives, like what is backed up in the science in terms of orofacial pain and TMJ treatment that is non-medication, because we learned about the side effects of medication that are prescribed in this kind of, problems. So that made me open up to both, to learn the Western and see when it's really needed to be used and what are other alternatives, because I do get patients who said no for medication. And I don't want to be there and say, oh, sorry, this is what I can offer, bye-bye, go home. No, I started to, coach them, and many of the TMJ patients, and in general, any chronic disease would need to and would benefit from alternative medicine, because the Western is only calming down the symptoms. This is what I found. But alternative, and within all its modalities, it helps a lot the chronic patients, because the chronic usually have an emotional, and kind of imbalance between body and spirit and mind, and the psychological, background to that. So me, myself, on top of that, I got chronic urticaria, which it lasted for 1.5 years. And again, it was horrible. When I woke up with my eye puffed up, my lips all over the place. And I seeked Western and I seeked alternative. And then I combined both to heal myself.
Interesting perspective. Okay, so it's good to know we've got everyone on the spectrum here. So I would love to know, for anyone listening right now who does or does not know what alternative medicine is, all they know is Western, could you tell me what alternative medicine looks like, sounds like, what are forms of it, Anne?
I think many of them have already been mentioned. So oils, food, beverages, good company, a great job, a loving relationship, hands-on healing, thought modification. All of these are as old as dirt and are actually in our own hands. So the agency is back to me, and so is the empowerment. So I would say that that's one key point. I think just to pick up on a couple of things, you see that all three of us have had a personal experience that flipped us out of some of our current thinking. It changed our filters. And if somebody had said, you know what, we're going to have to remove your nose unless you take that back, we're not going to take it back. So we know it's true. And the other thing you've heard the three of us say is that it isn't always a choice between one or the other, that I think probably all three of us are trying to knit together what makes most sense for that person's physical condition, but also belief system.
Right. I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, what's so interesting about what Yasmine said, in particular, of course, with your mind training, how does it start, Yasmine? I mean, someone's to come to you, and again, I know I'm asking all the big questions, but how does it start? I mean, someone's to come to you. What is your first step?
Okay, so most of the times people don't know what's wrong with them. So they just come to me and say, I have a problem, someone recommended you, and they said that you can help me. So it always starts with me helping them define the problem. So usually people, when they're thinking well and they're feeling well, they don't ask for help. So the first indication is an emotion. Right? So emotions are usually, they're the gauge that tells you about the quality of your thoughts and if something is off within you. And this is what really brings people and makes them ask for help. It's either an emotion or a physical ailment, something that flares up in their body or some pain, and this is when they start looking into what's going on within them. That's why you'll see that most people that go into alternative healing or even self-development, the majority go through it only when they hit rock bottom or they go through something detrimental in their lives. Very rarely would you find someone that suddenly gets enlightened and wants to just study it out of their own passion, which is hopefully one day would be the case. So one of my missions is to really raise awareness so that people will start educating themselves without the need to have problems or drama in their life. So we've known a lot of different alternative medicines, such as Ayurveda, which is yoga, meditation, and herbs, homeopathy, such as the natural remedies that basically trigger the immune system to self-heal. There's also acupuncture, Chinese medicine, a lot of it, right? And today we have a very huge array of alternative healing, more than ever. And it's something that everyone knows about. Like when I started 7 years ago, when I said energy, no one understood what I said. Today, we did raise group consciousness a lot. Like all of us working in this field, we did shift awareness. And now people know what's energy. People know what does it mean to attract certain things into your reality because of the way you think. Before, it was insane. Like if you tell people you attracted this, they would tell you you're crazy. This is just my destiny. So now the regular individual knows that, okay, there's something about my thoughts that is creating this in my reality, right? And this is great on its own. So I believe even science nowadays, even the medical field is also acknowledging the importance of the mindset and the psychology of the patient. So even with treatments for people who are going through, for example, cancer or any other kind of illness, there's a big emphasis now on stress, on their mental their mindset, their emotional well-being. All of that does play a role in their healing process.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that, actually, Yasmine, because that was going to be my question for Dr. Lana. I mean, of course, going through a career based on scientific facts, have you seen that shift within your peers, within medicine, where people actually, do you feel doctors feel forced, or actually feel like they almost have to retrain themselves now after years of studying to kind of cater to their patients?
Exactly. It depends on the mind of the doctor. Mm-hmm. If they are open to acknowledging that some cases we are not able to treat with Western and that there is a deficiency within that system, then they wouldn't acknowledge that the alternative is legit, Mm-hmm. And speaking of that, there is a doctor in the US, she's actually a gynecologist, that wrote a beautiful book for the colleagues in the medical field to really believe in alternative medicine. It's called Mind Over Medicine. Mm-hmm. And she gathered all the data and all the science that would back up that alternative medicine does work. Mm-hmm. And she actually decided to go into what we call functional medicine and integrative medicine, which is becoming a field that the normal Western medicine doctors can take and do extra education to look at the patient holistically. Mm-hmm. And that is becoming more acceptable within the medical field. Mm-hmm. Where they would learn to look at the patient as a whole and to look at their blood level and support them with vitamins and the stress relievers like yoga and meditation and all of that. Mm-hmm. So there are a part of doctors who are okay with that, and they start to pursue their knowledge in this.
You know what's so interesting is the history of alternative medicine versus Western medicine. You look at the Gen Zs and the millennials now who think potentially doing meditation or yoga is brand new information, that it's just been discovered. But culturally, this has been lasting for years. It is kind of like the foundation of a lot of our cultures. How important, Anne, are these cultural influences, and where do you think that the shift kind of happened back to alternative medicine?
Well, these traditions have been rich in every culture, right? Mm-hmm. My colleagues, everyone's nodding, all over the world that's been true. I think the resurgence is coming from things like there's not a single chronic or degenerative disease for which Western medicine has a cure, not one. What is chronic means it lasts a long time, degenerative gets worse, chronic degenerative double down, not good. So I think there's an awakening in the medical profession as well as those who are seeking healing and health and wellness, our birthright. So alternative, I think, has a whole nother label on it. In fact, I don't even call it that anymore. Mm-hmm. And I don't think no one views it as odd anymore. Right. Because it's been around for a very, very long period. I would say maybe between 1950 and 1970 or 80 is when it kind of dropped off. I'm not exactly sure why, but it was a dirty word then. It was not included in medical literature, et cetera. And then it's come back almost with a vengeance. Mm-hmm. Yeah, people are looking to be very empowered.
Mm-hmm. And I love to see it. I absolutely think that it's so important for the younger generations to understand this from a very young age. Yasmine, I mean, what you do is fascinating. I would love to know, have you seen any sort of shift in terms of the people that are coming in to see you in particular, whether it be culture, age, gender? Have you seen that shift?
Definitely. And usually the shift happens when people go like on a journey with me, like they sign up for a program. Mm-hmm. So we talk about the problem, we design the goals, and I work with them towards achieving that kind of person that they want to be instead. Mm-hmm. So what I focus on is not really teaching them anything. Mm-hmm. What I focus on is teaching them to unlearn. Mm-hmm. So it's a process of unlearning, because there's really a lot of garbage that has been conditioned into people's minds, which dims them from their authenticity, from their empowerment, like from their abilities, from their potential, from everything. So there isn't really much to learn. There is a lot to unlearn, and this is what I focus on. So by clearing limiting beliefs, by working with the subconscious mind, I use so many tools such as NLP, theta healing, quantum healing, NLP coaching as well. And we also work on designing the life that they would like to experience instead. And I teach them with rituals and practices and mental work as well, and meditations and visualizations, how to embody that new personality. It's like you're jumping into a new timeline. It's like you're dropping a timeline and you're jumping into a new timeline where you're becoming that new person with that new set of beliefs, new set of thoughts, new set of choices, behaviors and habits, and so on and so forth. So I would say that most of my clients have experienced transformational journeys. And this really depends on the person's free will, of course. Like if a person really desires this change, there's no way they will remain as they were. So they will definitely transform into that new person.
Absolutely. I mean, knowledge definitely is power, especially when it comes to a topic such as this. Dr. Lana, I mean, you must also have patients who laugh at the thought of alternative medicine. You know, they are programmed and conditioned in a way where, of course, Western medicine is just the way to go. How do you in particular try to change or shift that mindset? Do you try to encourage them to educate themselves more when it comes to that topic?
I think there's more awareness nowadays. I see more shift of my patients not wanting to take medications, honestly. More so in the last year or two, I would say. Rarely I would find someone that would say, no, I don't want to hear about any other thing, just fix me now. Before, Western medicine is looked at as if you take the pill, you're cured. We like it because there is no effort. We don't have to spend time, doing other stuff. It's just quick cure. Nowadays, people are more aware. Like you said, the group consciousness has come up to there are side effects of medication. Can we avoid these by putting more effort into looking into alternative things? So I usually, in my practice, when I have TMJ patients, which I have a lot, mainly in the last year or two, a lot of patients, I usually present them with different options. And I say there is an approach with medications and there is an approach without. And then we take the conversation into that. But what I found in general in most of the people, their life is out of balance.
Yes.
And then we start to talk about that. 95% of my patients are women and mothers. And most of the time, their life is totally out of balance. They have no me time. It's all about others. Their body is suffering and is giving them those signals of pain, which is saying enough is enough. And then I start to educate them about that, and we go into that conversation, which is by itself like a coaching. And when they release and I inform them of how to, arrange their time, that by itself really helps them to cure.
No, it's so interesting that you're mentioning this, actually. A personal story of mine. About a year ago, I had TMJ issues as well, and I went along to my practitioner, and it was actually, I was going along for dental issues, and he was, helping me with my jaw issues, and he actually printed out this piece of paper and he handed it over to me. I said, what can I do? I'm going away. I'm flying back to London. I need you to help me. And he handed me this page, and on it was bullet points, and he said, are you doing all of these things? And it was 6 to 8 hours of sleep every single night. It was, are you drinking proper filtered water? What are you doing alternatively? What is your lifestyle? And I'm 30 years old, and I was sitting there in absolute shock that a dentist essentially is talking to me about my well-being and my lifestyle. It was beautifully surprising because I thought this is the way we should be doing things. It's not just always just one issue. There's always something else attached to it. So I'm so glad that actually your patients also feel so comfortable speaking to you about their external problems or issues that they may have. Exactly. Social media has been such a strong influence, I personally think, especially with the pandemic. We were all in our homes, locked up, so to say. I personally loved it. No complaints here.
Great role,
our comfort zones, not having to go out, socialize. It was amazing. How do you think the pandemic, Anne, has changed people's perspective on the alternative medicine route?
Good question. Okay, so I think one shift, and y'all just jump in whenever, one shift has been that when this first happened, we didn't have any answers, and we knew that the answers, if they were even answers, would take a while to come. So many people that I've been working with for a day or years quickly jumped in to say, okay, what can I be doing right here, right now? And it's like, what do we have in the kitchen? What do we have in the backyard? What do we have in our minds, et cetera? So there was a shift in terms of taking full responsibility to get them in their best health possible. So taking care of their gut health and probably the list, and send that lovely gentleman a thank you note because he
Yes.
gave you the bullet points for the rest of your life. So that's worth like $10,000 million, right?
Yeah.
Just 8 bullet points. So there was a group of people that came back to understanding that it's probably how well I take care of my immune system that will predicate what happens with COVID. And there were other people who were just so in fear that whatever their options were, they were terrified of this thing. And what I have found is that the folks who responded that way, if you unpack it, there's a lot going on in their lives. And just really quickly, the way I practice medicine is that the body is always talking to us. It's called messages from the body. Everyone's nodding. And so I always say, it's like a kite. The part that you can see in the sky is the gross physical manifestation of unwellness. That's cancer, heart disease, insomnia, diarrhea, ingrown toenail, whatever it is. We can palpate it, we can blood test it, we can MRI it. But there's a string on a kite, a real kite. And that string is the emotional underpinning of unwellness. How have we been living, loving, working, and being of service? How is that impacting? Right? So as you rightfully said with TMJ, all my clients with TMJ, when I ask them, do you feel like you have a voice in your house? They look at me like, what? The nerves are associated with most of our pleasure and certainly with our ability to speak our heart, to speak our mind. And if the illness is thicker than that, let's say I have a lot of people refer to me or, quote, terminally ill, then we're looking at the spiritual underpinning, and you were talking about that. What are these dark shadow messages? You know, you're not worthy of being loved. You have to be perfect to be worthy of love. You have to work yourself to the ground to be worthy of anything. So these kinds of messages are running the show that are then influencing negatively our emotional states and certainly our sense of self-love, which then sure as shoot runs something up so that we see that physically. That is not the path to wellness. So that didn't really answer your question, but I think that a lot of people have been shut in. And there's been a real life review happening for people who are willing to be brave enough to do that. And hopefully we come out of this situation holding on to the things we learned.
Yes.
Like what really is important. And I think that most of us have figured that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can, I mean, I personally, even in my social circles, can feel that shift. And I mean, Yasmine, you must see that with the people that are coming in to see you with Myndtraining, but even in your own social, personal circles, is that a kind of shift that you see happening?
Definitely. Like what was happening is that everybody has been running, doing all the time, and that's masculine energy. So it's not gender-based, it's just the doing. And too much doing has exhausted everyone. So, and too much exhaustion creates stress, anxiety, panic attacks, and this is really the majority of the issues that people complain from. So what happened is that during this period, the reason why alternative medicine rose a lot, or maybe even self-development increased, it's because the feminine started rising. And when I say feminine, I don't mean gender as well. I mean it's the intuitiveness, the self-healing, the connection to the body, the feeling, the beingness got activated. And this is why people are now having more awareness, are more in tune, and really care about learning more. And I just want to mention something that Anne was saying, which is why in the 1950s there was a drop to the alternative medicine. And maybe it was a bit before that, and it was because this was associated with witchcraft and sorcery. And many people who had natural powers to heal or to even had clairvoyance or any of these really beautiful powers that we're meant to have were outcasted or were burnt or were crucified. So people started oppressing these powers because they don't want to be called crazy or they don't want to be hurt. And over the years, people forgot these abilities and got into their more doing mind, their masculine self, which is doing life instead of being and doing and balancing all of that. So hopefully we're reaching now more of the feminine being heard, the feminine having presence, and even in many corporates, because I do also trainings with corporates, they're asking now for a lot of mental wellness workshops and webinars for their employees, which is something unheard of before. I used to go and run after corporates, convincing them that your employees are important. You need to take care of them. They're the ones creating the culture and getting you the business. And it was zero budget.
Right.
Now they're actually asking for it, even though they don't know what it takes. But they are invested more than before. So hopefully this is going to be rising more and more.
It's so great to see that culture shift in the business corporate world. And, you know, we have now access to so much information with the funny thing called the internet and social media. Dr. Lana, I don't know if you've noticed this with people that come to see you. let's be honest, we all tend to self-diagnose a lot. We Google our symptoms and we're like, okay, yep, I've definitely got that, and we're certain of it. So that kind of shift against Western medicine, I feel like people are now maybe potentially putting themselves in harm because they're not actually going to the right people to be diagnosed, to give them a plan moving forward. What would you say to those people who are just trigger-happy self-diagnosers?
Don't.
Don't do
as
it.
simple as that. Because Google tends to overdiagnose.
Yeah.
And exaggerate the problem. If you just say, I have a chronic cough for 1 week, then it can be, a loop of diagnosis of cancer to, whatever. It really makes them scared, I would say.
Yeah.
People who come to me, I like it and I don't like it. I like it when they educate themselves and they learn how to have a second opinion and they, look for more information. But I don't like it really when they come with the diagnosis in their hand and believing that this is what it is. So that makes it difficult for us to, again, unlearn what they have learned from Google and, convince them of otherwise. So it has advantage, disadvantage, but in general, I see it's over diagnosis.
And 60 to maybe 85% of it's not accurate.
Exactly, of course.
Which most people
just
don't
so
know.
generalized.
Correct.
How can you diagnose yourself over just 1 or 2 symptoms, which can overlap with thousands of diseases?
Yes, no, completely agree. Now, I mean, for someone who is listening right now and, they still haven't settled in their own mind the debate between the two, I guess what we're concluding is there is a combination of both, is what we're all saying around the table. But as an individual, how do I know which one works for me, Anne?
Okay, if I can, I'm going to not answer that question because I don't think we necessarily have to make a choice of this or that. If I only had 30 seconds, I would say I would beseech everybody to pay attention to their own symptoms. How are you feeling? How are you doing? Chart that and then pick it up sooner rather than later because it's easier to fix with whatever modality you choose sooner rather than later. Your body is talking to you all the time. I just want people to have ears the size of an elephant. Listen. Honor what your body's telling you and go find a healer or a doctor or whatever you want to call the person that you can sit with and figure out your plan.
And I think it's so important to be open-minded as well when it comes to this. And I think that Myndtraining is a fantastic thing, Yasmine. Moving forward, how would you hope that the culture and the shift will move as we go?
Okay, so if I'm going to tell you about my biggest dream is to have self-development and self-awareness part of every school curriculum. Because before learning math and science, it's really important to learn about you being a human, how your brain thinks, how your emotions work, all that, understanding really who you are and connecting within. This is really very important. This is not a luxury anymore. This is a basic human need. It's something that every single person should be educated about, should know. The power of words, of thoughts, of how to make things happen in your life, how to be empowered, how to have self-confidence. All of this is important. So if we start with babies, not even with the youth, babies, if we start with them, raising them with in a thriving environment, with supportive tools, then we're not going to be working on fixing and curing things after the damage is done. So we're going to be actually creating the environment to allow them to thrive in a way that they're already growing into their fullest potential without the need to be cured.
Agree completely.
I love that answer, absolutely. Dr. Lana, just to get your last thoughts on this, how important is it to have these conversations with not just our social circles, our families, our children moving forward?
It's very important. And not only for that, in my opinion, as a summary of all this discussion today and what I came as a conclusion, Western medicine philosophies are so good for acute problems. Like if you have a burn, if you had a bone, you break your arm or leg, definitely the Western medicine has the answer for you. Or if you have an infection or you have a pus or, something of acute nature and fever and all of that, definitely the Western medicine helps to subside that. In return, the alternative medicine works so well for chronic, which the Western medicine doesn't. Because the Western medicine can come to a point that it would say for a chronic disease, I'm sorry, we have no answer for you. You have to live off this pill forever. And that pill, of course, has thousands of side effects, which doesn't make sense. Or they have a no for an answer. Oh, sorry, you have stage 4 cancer. We have nothing to do. Go and wait until you die. I mean, when the Western medicine reached to that point, then definitely it is deficient here. So my conclusion came to that. Acute problems, infectious problem, Western medicine usually help a lot. More chronic disease and chronic stuff go for alternative, usually have less side effects.
Well, you know what? It's been so fascinating sitting around this table, and I feel like we could probably go on for hours talking about this and discussing this. But I'm sure people are listening right now and would love to know more from you, how they can get in touch with you and potentially be part of your retreats as well. And how can they get in touch?
So my Instagram is youhealing, and the website is www.youhealing.org.
Amazing. And Yasmine, Myndtraining, fascinating. How can people get in touch?
Same thing. So it's on Instagram, Mind, MYND, Myndtraining. And on my website, it's www.myndtraining.com.
Amazing. And Dr. Lana, I mean, anyone who's listening and thinking, I need to go and see Dr. Lana, where can they find you?
Again, Instagram, Dr. Lana Dalbah. That's usually the best way to reach me one-on-one on the direct messages. It's the easiest way. Apart from that, I'm in the teaching field, so I have the courses and I have my YouTube channel, which have a lot of information for TMJ patients publicly. You know, I kind of went through as a mini course, but for the public, how to handle their own TMJ from the comfort of their home and to understand the problem in Arabic and English.
Fantastic.
And it's very popular and people really, really benefited from it.
Amazing. Well, thank you for all that you do. And ladies, thank you so much for joining me around this table. A wonderful conversation. And to listen to more episodes of Kef Connect, visit kefholdings.com. Go to the Kef Connect page. We are also available on various streaming platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and the Podbean podcast app and more. Until next time, see you then.